So welcome back to another tutorial on how to smoke brisket using your electric smoker. For the majority of the video, you guys will probably just see the bottom part of my shirt because, I guess because of my height, you won't be able to see most of me. So I just wanted to say thank you for watching ahead of time, and let's get this party started. One of the different things that I'm going to be showing you guys today is not only how to smoke the brisket, but also give you two different options on either slicing or chopping your brisket. So let's get this ball rolling. So it's always real good to have your stuff ready ahead of time so that you're not scrambling trying to get stuff with your hands full of meat, kind of like what I'm doing right now. Some of the things that you want to have ahead of time. First things first, of course, your brisket. You also, this is what I'm trying to show you here is how to prepare it before you smoke it. Okay, so the idea here is you want to season your brisket, let it marinate overnight before you actually put it into the smoker. So this is done the day before. First things first, gotta have your brisket. Second thing I recommend you guys get is something that looks similar to this. I got this one at Academy. All right, so this one, hold on, there it is. So what this one does is it allows me to season the brisket, and it's not as messy as doing it on a cutting board. The other thing you might need to get, or you are gonna need to get, is your choice of rub. You can do the Texas style rub, which is salt and pepper, or you can choose, like the one that I'm usually doing is the Rudy's. But this time I'm gonna try out HEB's Texas style smoked brisket rub. It smells kind of like Rudy's, so we'll see how this comes out. Okay, so you got your rub here, you got your brisket, you got your pan, you got your saran wrap, which I'll tell you what that's for later, and then you have your actual pan that you're gonna have it marinate in. Okay, so first things first, if you've seen my other videos, you guys are familiar with the wiggle test. All right, you're gonna go to the to whatever place you're gonna buy your brisket from, and you want to select briskets that are very wiggly, I guess you would say. Yeah, the more wiggle it has, the less stiffness it's on the inside, which will determine how much meat to fat content you're gonna get out of your brisket. Okay, this is about a 12.5 pounder. I'm gonna be doing about 4 or 5 of these. I'll show you how to do one, and then the rest of the videos you're gonna notice that there's more than one brisket, but it's all the same concept. Okay, so once you've picked out your brisket, this one was a pretty good one. First thing you want to do is you actually want to open it up. And I usually try to open it up from the thickest part up here, because it allows me to grab it better than opening it up from the bottom, from the flat part, and trying to pick it up from there. So here we go. You want to get your trash can handy here. You want to give it a little poke so that the air gets in there. Let gravity be your friend here. Let most of the juices go down. After a couple of seconds, then you can give it one going across. And then this is where it gets kind of tricky. You want to grab it. You got to get a good firm grip on it because it'll slip out on you. Try to get as much of the juices to stay at the bottom. And then kind of do this. Trash can here. That's why it's always good to be prepared. And there you go. That's the first major step, would be your transfer. All right, so after you do your transfer, the next thing would be to actually season it. I try not to cut too much off of it. Depends on how the brisket comes out. You might want to cut some off of it. I like the way this one looks, so I'm not going to trim too much off of it, because then what that'll do is that'll actually shorten the cooking process, because there's less brisket to actually cook. So just get your rub, and on this one, I'd start off with the fat side up first. You do want to season the side. You don't want to neglect it, but at the same time, you don't want to spend all of your rub or waste all of your rub on this side. Majority of this rub, I wouldn't say is going to go to waste, but the majority of this rub will not really hit the meat. This is just to give it a nice little coating. Be generous. Be generous with your rub, because this is what's actually going to penetrate your meat while it's in the refrigerator. You want to make sure that you have enough of it in there. The last thing you want is you have a nice tender brisket, but it doesn't have flavor on it. So what you want to do here is you want to try to get the edges as much as possible. And if you notice any excess rub that's coming out, it's staying within the confines of the actual tray here that I have. So this is one of the nice things that I like about this tray. It's tall, and it actually maintains a lot of the rub that's falling to the side. All right, so there you go. That's a nice little generous rub on it. You can flip it over one more time just to make sure you get everything. All right, so there you go. It took about a third, closer to a half of this bottle, but it's well worth it. You want to get it all in there. If you have any nooks and crannies, get them in there. That way, the flavor, don't neglect this part. Look, right here, I don't have any, so I got to make sure I have some there. All right, there you go. So, worst case scenario, this rub is going to be just on the bark, and it might penetrate a little bit, but what this will actually serve as is actually tenderizes it just a little bit more. Right. So now that you have it nice and seasoned, however many briskets you do, you want to do this to every single one. Then you need to transfer it one last time into your actual tray. I like using disposable trays, but if you have trays at the house that you can use and wash, by all means. It's $1 a tray, so I can just use it, and then if I can salvage it, I will, and if not, I will go ahead and throw it. Okay, so let me pause this real quick. Okay, I had to pause that so I could go ahead and wash my hands. I had rub all over my hands. The last step of the marinating process, I guess you would call it, would be the actual shrink wrapping of your tray that you're going to be putting in the refrigerator. Now, I know this has this thing, but I kind of like to just take it off. And the whole idea behind this is to try to actually just cover it so that nothing else lands on it when it's in the refrigerator. There's no real scientific way of doing this. It helps if you have an additional hand, but if not, just go through the top, through the bottom, through the top, through the bottom. Again, this is all in an effort to try to just keep the meat on its own, so that nothing else goes in there, and at the same time protect it from the refrigerator. And that way, because if it's a powerful tenderizer or rub that you're going to be using, it will seep through it, and the smell will seep, and you'll have that smell in your refrigerator for a while. So just go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and pause it and finish this off, and then we'll go back to the next step. We'll come back to the next step. All right, like I said, it's not rocket science. All you really want to do is try to get this covered from the top to bottom. The next step here now would be to leave it preferably overnight. 18 to 24 hours is a perfect combination of time or length of time that you want to leave it over. And then after that, we'll go ahead and we'll take you to the next step. But this is one of the reasons that I like getting the real cheap pans, because notice how it folded in. This one, once I'm done with, I'm going to have to throw it. So don't spend a lot of money on these type of pans. Just get the cheapest one you can find, knowing that you're gonna end up disposing of it. All right, we'll see you in the next step. So now that your briskets are in the refrigerator seasoning or marinating overnight, it would be a good time to go ahead and prepare your electric smoker. I recommend you do this as soon as you finish your briskets. That way you don't get up in the morning or whenever you're going to start and say, now you have to take another 20-30 minutes to set up, because it does take a little bit of time to set up. My setup is pretty much a standard setup except for one addition that I added. What I did here is I used aluminum foil, the heavy duty one, the wider, I guess you would call it the wider one that you can buy from the store. I recommend heavy duty. Of course, I got this one at HEB, of course, Texas Tough, but any heavy duty type of foil paper will do. What I did with that foil paper is I actually lined the drip pan down there, and the water pan, I lined it with the foil paper. This just makes cleaning afterwards a lot easier. Okay, just make sure that you do put in your drip pan in the back for the fat that's going to come out. And the only modification I've done to my electric smoker is I actually added this cold smoker attachment. If you want more information on this, I do have other videos that go into detail about what it does, what it's capable of, but what I did right now is I actually loaded it up with my chips that are going to be going ready for whenever we start. I mean, other than that, we're good to go. If you have that set up, that way when it's time to actually do your briskets, you don't have to worry about it. You just load them up and you turn it on. So we're at that point in the cook now that we're going to actually put the briskets into the smoker. These briskets have been marinating overnight. So I got about 5 of them that I'm going to do. Okay, so before you do this, I would highly recommend you get yourself some apple cider vinegar and put that on your actual water pan. All right, this helps keep the briskets moist and it won't allow them to dry out. So let me load these puppies up and then we'll go from there. So now I have my briskets loaded up. We got 1, 2, 3, and I doubled up the bottom one, 4 and 5. When you want to do this, let's say you need to make a lot of brisket like I need to do for my fundraiser. If you are going to put one on the bottom or in the middle, if you're going to double it up, instead of getting about a 14 or 15 pound brisket, I would recommend you get a 9 to 10 pound brisket, and you can put 2 of them on the bottom because you don't want to overload them. Okay, so the other thing that I did, the other modification, is I actually purchased a multiple reading thermometer. Okay, which means that I have probes in each one of these briskets that'll give me the exact temperature of each one. Highly recommend that. That way it takes the guesswork out of actually knowing when your brisket is done. All right, so briskets have been marinated, seasoned. Now they're in the actual electric smoker. Now the next step is to actually start smoking. So you're going to close this up. Make sure this pan is hitting the edge down here. That's where your drips are going to be coming. Make sure that little hole back there is open. Back there, way back there. Because that is actually what's going to allow your fat to come out, or your drippings to come out this way. If that's blocked, that's actually going to accelerate your cooking time. So you got to be careful with that. Always be careful with that. So you're ready to cook. I always turn on my smoker. I want to set the temp. The rule of thumb is low and slow. So I'm going to stay with that method. I'm going to go to 220. All right. And then I'm going to set time. I'm just going to give it the 24 hours. Set seconds. All right. Once you see that red light going, that means that your actual heating element is heating up already. Now, depending if you just have the normal chip attachment or chip tray, it's going to look something like this. So you would add your chips to this. You would stick it in there, turn it, check it every 30 to 45 minutes to make sure that your chips are still smoking. If not, you can add some more. But what I did is I went ahead and I invested in this cold smoker. Now this is supposed to be like for cheeses and salmon, but I of course modified it for my liking. I like this cold smoker because it allows me to add chips on a hopper that's from this length. It's almost the length of the whole heating thing. So if you open it up, you have the chips all the way to the top, and what's going to happen is going to heat them up, and as it's heating it, it's going to keep going down, 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 and that way you don't have to be checking your chips every so often. Okay, nice little attachment, highly recommended. So now that you have everything set up, you're going to have to be patient. A good brisket will take anywhere between, depending on the size, but anywhere between 14 to 18 to up to 20 hours. All right, I've seen others say I can make a brisket in 4 hours, but I don't know about that one. So all it's going to do now is it's going to start to smoke. You just keep your eye on the temperature, keep your eye on the on your smoke chips that they don't run out, and be patient. You know, this is something that you want to do overnight, something that you want to, if you want to have a brisket done by, let's say, 12 o'clock the next morning, you want to start 12 o'clock the day before. That way you give yourself a lot of time, because these briskets, they sometimes take longer than normal. Sometimes they take less than normal. So when it takes longer, that's when you have a problem. You're going to have to raise the temperature up a little bit to accelerate the process. When it takes less time, all you have to do is adjust the temperature, and it won't cook as fast. All right? And then I'll show you the next step. So one of the problems that a lot of people are seeing with these, I wouldn't say a problem, it's just that they just don't know. With these smoker attachments, if you notice, there's a lot of smoke coming out. You know, you want the smoke to come in, not out. There's two reasons for this. One, the heating element hasn't gotten hot enough so it can draw the smoke in. But two, your little vent up here makes a big difference. So I'm going to see if you can get both of them in the shot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the vent, and you're going to notice that most of the smoke will stop coming out of the smoke of the attachment, and it'll start coming out of going into the smoker. So if you notice, there's some smoke coming out of there, but as soon as I open the vent, most of the smoke will stop coming out. Okay, so that tells you that it's bringing it in. If you stop it, you'll start getting the smoke. Okay, so for this one, you actually want to keep it open during the smoking process. Okay, during the smoking process, you want to leave it wide open so that all the smoke can be drawn in. It's been about 5-6 minutes, and I can already see the smoke accumulating in there in my briskets. So that means everything is good. Just keep an eye on it. This is a really good sign right here, all this smoke coming out. That's why I love this attachment down here. Just keep an eye on it. I will tell you, what you need to do is you need to get the brisket internal temp to at least 140. Once it hits 140, all the smoke that you're smoking into the brisket will stop penetrating the brisket, and after that it's just a simple cook. Okay, so once you hit 140, then you can actually close this off. You can turn your smoker off, this smoker attachment off, and just leave it heating, and it'll continue cooking for the rest of the time. All right, so just be patient. Keep an eye on the temperature. Keep an eye on your chips for the first 4 hours, more or less, because that's what's going to determine how much smoke flavor you get in your brisket. So while we wait for our brisket to get up to about 140 degrees, it's a real good time to do a little bit more extra prep work in the background. Just to give you an update. Yeah, there you go. What I do during the cook, after 140, between when there's a stall, there's going to be a stall where your brisket, the internal temp is going to be going up very, very slowly. So during that time, what I like to do is I like to open up the smoker here, and I have put in this spray bottle some apple cider vinegar. Okay, so the reason I do this is I spray the barks, because I like to have a little bark to my brisket. If you don't do this. But if you do like a little bark, get yourself some apple cider vinegar in a spray bottle, and throughout the cook, periodically, I would say every 2 hours after it's hit 140, I would open it up, spritz it down, and then close it. And this will help not only to keep trap some of the moisture in, but it'll also give you a nice little bark. The other thing is, there's always a great debate on fat side up or fat side down. Honestly, I've done it both ways. The thinking behind it is if you do fat side down, you'll protect it from the heat, from the heating element on the bottom. And if you do fat side up, as the fat is melting away, it's going to actually continue to, I guess, keep your brisket moist because it's going to be because of gravity. I've done it both ways. They've come out pretty much the same both ways, so it's really up to you. It's however you feel like doing it. On all these, however they came out is how I put them in. I didn't really see, I need to put it up or down. It's just your personal preference, okay? Just an update on the cook itself. As you can see, we started at 24 hours. Now we're down to 19 or 20 hours, 19 hours and 58 minutes. Technically, it's been the 4 hours, but this is why it's very important to keep a meat thermometer probe in your meat. Remember earlier I had mentioned that you need to hit it at least 140. Well, if you notice, this is giving me my readings for my briskets. They all have different internal temps. Right now we have 126, 122, 120, 120, and 136, which, because I haven't hit the 140, I can continue adding more smoke. So I will continue adding smoke until all of my meats have hit over the 140. Now, this is a good time after 4 hours to come and check for your fat droppings or that'll come out through here. Now, I know it's not totally full, but I would recommend getting rid of this, because the longer the cook goes, there's going to be more and more fat going to be displaced. Now, this is also a good indicator. If you have nothing here after about 4 hours, that tells you that maybe there's a blockage. If there's a blockage, you need to take that care of that. If not, that's going to wreak havoc on your food, on your brisket. So remove this, put it back, and then you're good to go on that. So we are now over 6 hours into the cook. I waited this long because I wanted to just make sure that you guys understand what's going on. I tried to get all of my briskets to go at least over 140. There's a smaller brisket that's at 171 right now, but look, 142, 147, 140, 136, and then of course your 171. This is why I say it's very important that you try to get meat probes into all of your briskets, because some briskets, depending on their size, will cook faster than others. But now that we got to the point where the briskets will not take any more of the smoke, now is a time that I would actually close this off, and it goes from smoking to cooking. And when I say that is that I won't add any more smoke to my smoke adapter. I mean chips to my smoke adapter, or any more chips if you have that hopper. But this would be the perfect time to actually do your first spritz. Now remember I mentioned to you guys spritzing. Spritzing will allow you to keep some of that moisture in. So there you go. There's the briskets so far. I mean they're nice and they're getting ready to get spritzed. So this is what I'm talking about. This is your apple cider vinegar in here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to spray. Give it a nice little spray on the top, the bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. All right, by doing this, you're gonna create a little bit of a, I guess you would call it like a protective layer. Excuse me. Oh, that vinegar really gets to you, and that will allow you to keep some of your brisket moisture in there. Now, some who do not like a lot of smoke or the bark very tough on your brisket, what some people will actually do is at this point they'll actually wrap them. That's another option that you can have. You can actually wrap your briskets either in foil or in paper. They have a special paper that is used for meats. If you want that, that is when this is the time to do it. Once it hits the 140, there's no more smoke. All you're going to be doing is completing the cook. Just be careful, because when you do wrap it, it does accelerate the cooking process a little bit. It'll shorten your time. So at this point, you either leave it so you can get a nice little bark on it, or if you want to keep it more of the soft bark, you would wrap it. I would also recommend that if you haven't done it so far, is actually look at your dripping pan over here. Notice how it's filled up again. I would remove it because it's a little bit over halfway. Now, mine has been dripping a lot of fat because I have 5 briskets in here. If you're only cooking 1 brisket, you'll probably get this amount of fat in the entire cook. So don't think you have to be checking every single time, but just keep an eye on it. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to remove this so that it doesn't overflow, because I am planning to leave it overnight. Once all of my briskets get to my desired temperature, I will take you to the next step. So this gets me to another tip. Whenever you're looking to purchase more than 1 brisket, you want to try to keep them at within a very close range of weight of each other. This is going to determine your cook time. So the reason I say this is because I have 4 out of the 5 briskets that are pretty much within about a pound to a pound and a half of weight. But then I found a really, really tempting one that I couldn't just pass up or let go. But that one was about 3 pounds smaller or lighter. So it does make a big difference. If you notice, if you're looking at the cooking temperatures here, the Inside Pro is, one of them is at 181, 176, 174, 172, and the really light one is at 189. Okay, what does that mean? That means that the light one is going to be ready way before the others are. So you just got to keep an eye on that. You want to keep your briskets within a pound to a pound and a half of each other so that they come out more or less the same. You can still cook it the way I'm doing it. The only thing is that I'm going to have to pull the smaller one out a lot sooner than all the other ones. So just keep that in mind. Anything more than 1 brisket, you got to keep them within the same weight range, more or less. So we're about 10 hours into the cook. Started at 24 hours. We're down to 13 hours. This is what it looks like so far. We have brisket 1, 2, 3, and then down here I got briskets 4 and 5. Okay, so that little one over there on the bottom is the one that I'm telling you that I might have to pull out before all the other ones. I tried to mask the brisket as much as possible by putting another one on top of it, but it didn't work. It looks like it's going to come out before all the other ones. But look at it, look at all those juices. Now, some of this is not juice from the inside. I've been spritzing, like I've told you before. I like to spritz my briskets. So I've been spritzing them so to keep them nice and moist. So some of that water that you, or some of those drippings that you see is not necessarily the brisket, but the actual spritz. Now down here, another thing you might just, already told you this, but just to reiterate, back there is a little hole that allows it to drain all the fat out. So just make sure that you keep that clear, because if not, it can be real bad for your briskets. It brings up the temperature inside the electric smoker too fast, too high, and it'll make your briskets come out a lot sooner. But there you go. Look at what those beauties are looking nice. So this brisket already hit the desired temp. I wanted to hit it at least about 195. So the next step, or what I want to show you now, is how to wrap it. You want to use 2 pieces of long foil from this aluminum foil, the longer one. And you want to go ahead and wrap it as tight as possible. You just grab it. I overlaid them one against the other. You wrap it, you turn it around once, kind of bring it in a little bit. Bring in the other side. This brisket will be hot, so just be careful you're going to get burned. I mean, it's not too hot, but it's still hot. And you give it a turn. And then you give it another turn. And just for safekeeping, what you want, the reason you want to do this is you want to try to keep as much of the juices in the foil itself. So I actually go over it one more time, like this, just to make sure in case there's a hole somewhere. which I think I saw one. There you go, it's nice and secure. So your next step would be to let the brisket rest. It needs to rest in order for the fibers to settle down and be able to be cut easier. At first I thought it was a myth. I said, you know what? People just say rest to make it rest. And I tried it out. I actually got a brisket right out of the smoker and I tried to cut it. And what ended up happening was that the brisket was, even though it was on the lean part, it was like coming like shredded meat. So yes, you do give it at least an hour to 2 hours to rest. Once you have that, then you're ready to slice it up or chop it up. So when you let it rest, you actually wrap it up in foil and you get yourself a nice cooler that's going to be big enough. And you just go ahead and you put it in there and you let it rest for the 2 hours more or less that you're going to be doing it. So once you put it in there, you let it rest and then it's ready to go. Now it's time to slice the brisket. Now this brisket has been resting for a couple of hours. As you can see there, you might be able to see there's some of the juices still on there. There are a couple of different ways to actually slice a brisket. I like to divide and conquer, but since this is such a small brisket, I'm just going to start off at the flat end. This is that way. This is where all the lean part is. I'm going to go against the grain. If you look at your brisket, the fibers are going to be going one of two ways. You always want to, if the fibers are going this way, you always want to cut against. That'll give you a nice tender type of feel to your brisket. So let's cut into this to see what this looks like. Flip this over. Since the grain is coming this way, I'm going to go ahead and just start cutting this way. Now what I normally do is I just normally use an electric knife, but I went ahead and I purchased one of these carving knives, and they work out pretty good as well. So you just keep on cutting against the grain, and just to give you an idea of what we're working with. Right there. If you look at that, of course, this bottom part, you can trim that off. This is all the fat part of it. You can go ahead and trim that off, but just by grabbing this will indicate how tender it is. Just pulls apart. All right. So just keep on cutting the brisket. I'm going to continue doing it. Now the best part of this is taste testing it. Oh, yeah, it tastes pretty good. Now, because I see there's a lot of fat on there, I'm actually going to flip it over. And I'm actually going to remove some of that fat so that it doesn't come with my brisket. So the way you do that is, you look, you see that there's the fat part is there. You just want to cut across. Try to get rid of some of that fat. And this is one of the reasons that I also say you want to season the fat part of the brisket, but you don't really want to season too much of the fat part because a lot of it stays behind. You're going to remove most of it anyways. This was a pretty lean brisket to begin with, so there's not too much fat that we can speak of. There are going to be briskets that are a little bit tougher in regards to how much fat comes into it. So just go ahead and remove some of the fat layer on top. So when you cut your slices, there's not that much fat on them. So now I flipped it back over, and now we're just going to continue cutting and see what this beauty gives us. Now at some point, what you're gonna notice is that the meat is going to have two different, it's gonna be going two different ways. So that's when I would actually separate, at this point, that's when I would separate the top part from the bottom part. This carving knife is pretty good because of its length. If you use a regular knife, it's not gonna be long enough. So when you get to the other parts, you won't be able to cut them nice and even. Now notice how it's still all the same. So I can continue cutting. Still all lean. Still all lean. So the center part is really where the majority of your brisket is going to come out of. We just kind of grab this and do another pull test. You see it, it's already coming apart. I'm not even, yeah, there you go. I want to get to that part where the two pieces meet so I can show you what I do at that point. Alright, so I removed some of the meat that I had already cut on the side just to give you a little bit more perspective. You can already see there's that other layer that I was talking about coming out. I just want to cut a couple more before I actually go in here. Get all those juices coming out. I don't know. All right, so this is why I wanted to stop and show you. This this brisket is cut into two different, well, the meats are in two different ways. Notice the grain is coming this way on this part, but on the bottom part, they're starting to look different. If you continue cutting your brisket like this, it'll be very tough to try to pull apart. See, there's a little bit of brisket that's it's kind of hard to pull apart compared to this side where you just pull on it. Okay, so what you need to do there is you actually need to go in there and separate these two so you can cut them the right way so that you don't have that issue. Okay, so let me remove this from here. That's a good, the fibers are going the wrong way, so this will be a tougher type of brisket to cut. I mean to chew on. Let me remove that here. So when this happens, I actually like to, if possible, stand it straight and then try to cut down at an angle and divide the brisket. I mean, it's not going to be a perfect slice, but you'll get it, the majority of it, you'll get it separated so that you can actually cut it the proper way. So then you just continue slicing against the grain. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish slicing this one up. I will come back and I'll show you the other method of cutting this brisket, which would be the chopped method. Stay tuned for that one. All right, so the next method that you can use in order to chop up your brisket is kind of like, I like to call it the divide and conquer method. So what this does is it just makes it easier for you to handle the brisket. When you get this out of the cooler, Sometimes it's still going to be a little hot, so just be careful. Divide and conquer means divide it in half. This allows you to do a couple of things. First, you notice how all of that is still the lean part. So because all of it is still kind of like the lean part, I don't have to really worry too much about the fibers. Now, when you're doing the chopped brisket, the way you cut it does not really, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter, but you're gonna end up chopping it in all different ways. So the first thing you want to do is you want to try to get rid of some of the fat, again like the other one, just so that you have as much meat as possible. And then you want to remove the fat off of here. You'll have some fat pockets that you want to get rid of. You don't want to just serve. You want to leave some of the fat in there, but too much of it it's going to make your brisket look like it's too greasy. All right, so this knife is really good for slicing. Now, in order to get the desired effect on a chopped brisket, for let's say chopped brisket sandwiches, you want to use a cleaver, a meat cleaver. All right, I'm going to show you what that looks like. You don't have to use one of these, but it does come with a little bit of weight on it, so it helps out a little bit in cutting the meat. Now, one of the things that you just have to be aware of is you're gonna want to try to chop it up all at once. You want to take it in steps, so that way it doesn't seem like too much. So a cleaver looks kind of like this. All right. So what you want to start off with, and if I can, I want to move this over to a plate. Just for now. What you want to do here is you're going to go and you're going to chop this way. And if you can, either turn this or turn your cutting board and then chop this way. And then chop at all different angles, because the whole point is that it's supposed to be like a random chop. It's not supposed to be uniform like slices. So you just kind of, and when I mean you don't want to try to cut all the way through, don't try to go all the way through on the first hit. This is kind of like a beginner. You're starting off here. And once you get a little bit of a rhythm, you see how it starts to take shape. So now I'm going to go another direction. Alright, then you want to move the meat around, because the bottom part is going to be where your bark is from the other one. So you want to chop that up as well. And really the main point here is that you want to go at different angles, so that it doesn't just go all to one angle. It really doesn't take too much. The more you chop it, the finer the brisket is going to get. It just depends on your consistency. If you want it more coarse, you might want to stop. If you want it in smaller pieces, you just keep going until you reach your desired consistency. But I mean, there you go. I mean, it doesn't take too much, and look at all that brisket that came out of that one piece. I'm gonna go ahead and continue chopping up all my other briskets. I do appreciate you guys joining and viewing my videos. If you do have any questions, please leave them on the comments below. I will try my best to get back to you guys. But if you follow this method, you will have no problems making your own brisket where people are gonna be wanting it from you. Once again, thanks for watching, and if you like my channel, please subscribe.